Hello, everybody. Welcome to the new MDs. We started as mothers, doctors, and scientists, and now the integrative physician is in. This is episode, are we at 33? This is, I believe so, episode 33. And today I am delighted to have a special topic, a special guest, and something you're not going to hear very often, and I hope it will increase your understanding of all the different tools in our holistic toolbox. So today's topic is bioregulatory medicine, and it is my pleasure and honor to welcome a colleague and someone who I've known about, a few decades, Dr. James Odell. Welcome. And Dr. James Odell is, I believe he's the executive and medical director of the Bioregulatory Medical Institute, which is in Scottsdale. But before I talk about who he is and why we are so happy to have you with us today, James, is after reviewing his work, his bio, and his books, I thought, oh my gosh, another underachiever, not very accomplished practitioner. So James, welcome. And please tell our listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we'll launch into our conversation today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure. And I'm a naturopathic physician. I graduated in 1980. And then I did postdoctoral studies in traditional Chinese medicine at Shantou University Medical College in China, where I basically learned a lot about acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine. On returning to the United States, I teamed up with Dr. Thomas Rau, who is from Switzerland, from the Paracelsus Clinic in Switzerland. And so I went to Europe to study at that time with something that I didn't know much about, and that was European bioregulatory medicine. And he had a clinic there, the Paracelsus Clinic, and so I studied there for some time. He had very interesting types of diagnostics and therapeutics that were all, again, new to me. Diagnostics like contact regulation thermography, dark field microscopy, many kinds of therapies that he would use, particularly homeopathy and isopathic medicine, as well as a lot of IV therapies and the like, hyperthermia and ozone therapy and many others. And so I brought a lot of that information back to the United States, but then Dr. Rao and I started doing conferences together here in the United States almost for over 10 years. And so we together organized these conferences on the East Coast mainly for people that were interested in learning more about European bioregulatory medicine. So that's kind of my story. I live in Louisville, Kentucky. I have a practice here. I have two children and two grandchildren. And so I'm kind of winding down now as far as my practice, but I'm still very active with the Bioregulatory Medicine Institute, and we're very passionate about trying to get the word out about what is bioregulatory medicine. And so this is a nonprofit, non-commercial institute. Everything that we do as far as the website and the platforms that we use are all free to the public.
Wow. Thank you. And I invite everybody to please take a look at the website. I did prepping for the show today, reviewed it. I've been on it before. The podcasts on there are excellent. There are events. There's lots of references and materials, a lot on homotoxicology, and we'll get into what that is. One of my favorite tools, because as you may or may not know, I'm an MD homeopath. I literally trained myself to become a naturopathic doctor is what I've done over the past 40 years. I am very classically trained in mainstream medicine and then transitioned over to an integrative holistic practice. But I want to start dissecting down into what is bioregulatory medicine exactly. And let's give our audience an understanding of what it is that we're so passionate about and why we spent decades looking at this field of medicine. Perhaps you can take us through it. And I know you have some slides to share, James.
Sure. Happy to do so. I really, in order to give a good definition of bioregulatory medicine, I think we kind of need to review some of the history of it. So going back to the turn of the century in the early 1900s in Europe, there was, of course, a lot of homeopathy. Many of the physicians there were homeopaths. There was also a lot of herbal medicine and just natural types of medicine that were a part of Germany, Switzerland, Austria. Then comes along anthroposophical medicine, Rudolf Steiner, Ida Wergman, and that brought in another type of homeopathy, really, that anthroposophical homeopathy. And then comes along, really at the same time almost, you have a lot of energetic medicine. So people started doing frequency therapy and electrical therapies, and working with the energetics of the body in a wide variety of ways. So that evolved, really. It evolved into also electrodermal testing and the basic types of screening using electrodermal types of devices. And then at the same time, it kind of bootstrapped on some traditional Chinese medicine as well as Ayurvedic medicine. So here you have a composite of a lot of these traditional medicines coming together, kind of an amalgamation or a composite of all of this. And so about in 1940, the word biological regulatory medicine was coined. And this really was the science of self-healing. So it's basically those attempts to help the body self-heal, those natural attempts to help the body self-heal. And this continued really for quite a while in Europe. But then it started changing its name, and they just shortened it to biological medicine. So there are many biological medicine clinics we're a part of and still are a part of, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, even into France and elsewhere. But this created a terminology problem, as you could well imagine, calling it biological medicine and taking the regulatory out of it. Why the regulatory is so important is because basically it's all about not disturbing the regulatory mechanisms and the adaptive mechanisms of the body, like so many drugs and things do. As you know, drugs can interfere with, they block different proteins and enzyme systems. And so downstream, you have side effects. This is not what bioregulatory medicine is. But then comes along now the pharmaceutical industry about 20 years ago, starting to call a lot of medicines like vaccines and chemotherapy biologicals, right? And so there was a confusion that happened. Well, what's biological medicine? Does that mean that it's vaccines? Does that mean it's the chemo? And say, well, no, we're really talking about bioregulatory medicine. So we had to put the regulatory back into it in order for people really to understand that this is not what we do. We're not about those types of medicines and pharmaceuticals that interfere with the body's ability to regulate or self-heal. So this is kind of in a nutshell, what bioregulatory medicine is. It's really based on these traditional medicines, and it's really fruited now to incorporate a wide variety of interesting therapies. We have, whole body hyperthermia, ozone therapy, and oxidative therapies, a wide variety of energetic therapies like frequency therapy and light therapy. This has really bloomed out, particularly, we've heard about red light therapy and the like too. But mainly we're talking about frequency therapies and how this is the advent of, I think, of sound and light therapy. And so this is all a very important part of bioregulatory medicine too.
This is such a good point because mainstream or allopathic medicine, Western medicine, whatever you'd like to call it, there are many words for it, really focuses on the physical body. And what we're talking about is that healing is way more than the physical body. And actually, mainstream medicine is really focused on the suppression of symptoms, not on enhancing what we call in homeopathy the vital force, the chi, the prana, the energetic soul, if you will, of each individual. And that's why I fell in love with bioregulatory medicine, that it's the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual that we're looking at, and we do a lot of healing with energy, and that is sort of hard for many mainstream or Western practitioners to grasp, this idea that energy can heal, whether it's sound, light, magnetism. There are so many ways to heal. And so when people say, what should I do? It really depends on the individual, because
Sure.
it takes us a long time to do a case, right? I know an hour and a half, for homeopaths, it could even be 2 hours to take someone's case. So it's very individualized medicine, not
Yes.
one size fits all.
Exactly. Bioregulatory medicine is personalized or individualized, as you say. What works for one person won't work necessarily for the next. And so a lot of it, depends, of course, on not only our genetic makeup, but our psycho-emotional makeup as well, on our belief system. So you have to work with the individual. And that's why it does take a lot more time. And that's one of the principal differences between allopathic medicine and bioregulatory medicine, is that it is more personalized and individualized. Here, we're treating basically symptoms. I mean, we're treating underlying causes and not symptoms.
Mhm.
And whereas, as you know, a lot of the symptoms have been codified within conventional medicine. And so that's what they treat. You go into a doctor or into a hospital, and they'll give you different codes, different diagnostic codes, and that's what they're treating. They're not necessarily treating you as an individual in any way. They're just treating those codes. And so this is a main difference of bioregulatory medicine and conventional allopathic medicine, is that we're treating the underlying causes of a condition and looking at that individual. To look at that individual over time, you have to a lot of times go way back to their childhood and understand really, what have they been exposed to, what kind of chemicals, but also traumas, and the psycho-emotional is very important. Another area that we get into in bioregulatory medicine is dentistry, bioregulatory dentistry. And so this is a very important part of it. And when I went to Europe, I met up with a lot of dentists at the clinic there at the Paracelsus Clinic, and I realized how important it was for the doctors to work in tandem with the dentists that were there. And so, unfortunately, in our world, that dentistry and conventional medicine are divorced, and we don't really see that they talk together much at all. So if a person comes in with a headache, and I'm saying, well, let's look in your mouth. Let's look at your teeth. Do you have any root canal treated teeth? Do you potentially have any amalgam fillings, or maybe a cavitation or something like that? They've never thought about that, and their neurologist wouldn't think about that because that's not part of their field. But this is an important piece of it, is that we really want to look at the whole individual, as you say, not just only physical, but functional, energetic, the environment in which they live, the social impacts and traumas that they may have experienced, all that psycho-emotional issues, as well as the dental too.
I love that the dental is a leg of the stool of the practice. And, there was one point in our history where practitioners, physicians were also dentists. And then it wasn't until later they kind of branched off. And now, as you say, we consider dentistry this like alien force, that the mouth is divorced from the rest of the body. The same thing is true of psychiatry, that the brain and the head and the psyche and the emotions are divorced from the physical body. I thought, there is such a misstep there, and this kind of dissection of body parts and specialties never worked in Western medicine, and now we're trying to bring it all back. Perhaps this is a good time. Do you want to go through? I know you have a little presentation for us. Is this a good time to kind of?
Yeah, sure. Let me just pull up so this, again, bioregulatory medicine is a comprehensive, holistic approach to health, which advocates the use of natural healing methods to support and restore the body's intrinsic ability to regulate, adapt, regenerate, and self-heal. We often just call it the science of self-healing, and that's what my podcast is called. I do a podcast every other week, and it's called The Science of Self-Healing. And so you can see these fundamental differences in conventional medicine and bioregulatory medicine. Conventional medicine focuses on the symptoms. And as I say, a lot of these symptoms are codified, where we're really looking at the underlying causes, which we'll get to here in a second, looking at what potential causes are we looking at. The conventional medicine treats the disorder, and we're really trying to focus on being more personalized and individualized with all the therapies that we try to get our arms around. Generally, the conventional medicine is more chemical medicine, pharmaceutical-driven medicine, though, of course, the surgery is a part of that too. But here we're looking at all kinds of non-toxic treatments, not only chemical, but also energetic as well, light, sound, and as well as the psycho-emotional and the dental too. The approach here in conventional medicine is more linear, A to B, whereas we're trying to be more multi-level. And what that really means here is that there's rarely is there one cause for a disease. Here we're looking at antecedents and triggers. There may be several antecedents that give rise to a toxic, what we call terrain or milieu within the body or within the energetic body, within the biofield. And these toxic events set up a stage, and all it takes is an event, like a traumatic event, to come around, and then this triggers it, and this triggers a certain kind of illness. That illness is, again, more we're looking at it as an individual illness. But so we're really treating the patient, not the disease. We go to the next slide. Here, this is, I'm sure you've probably seen something like this with the iceberg, that the causes are way more than the symptoms, and goes way deep down sometimes into a person's past. But the symptoms are defensive attempts of the organism against disruptions to its normal functions, and are regulatory healing processes that should not be disrupted, but rather supported. Of course, this is a very important part of homeopathy too, as well. For any homeopath would say that, yes, we don't want to suppress the symptoms. We want that this symptom, this fever or whatever it may be, is the body's attempt to heal itself, and it should be supported in some way, that it's not being suppressed. We could go to the next slide. So here's just a few of the underlying causes that we talk about. There's really many, many more than this, but I like to start out with the chronic psycho-emotional stresses. I think that this is a very big piece of what we're dealing with in today's world. Is many people are stressed, they've had traumas, and they just store this up within their biofield and within their milieu, past events and shock traumas. But also there's physical injuries. Maybe they were in an auto accident. There's structural impairments. I often advocate structural types of therapy like chiropractic or osteopathic or Pilates and yoga and things that help to rebalance the structure of the body. This is very important, as well as biochemical imbalances many people are very acidic, they're very toxic, and this causes a disruption within their mineral balance or within their amino acid pool or whatever of the body. So we have to, in some way, get back in there and balance those biochemical causes. Also, organ gland dysfunctions. We see that the liver is overtaxed. Many organs of detoxification are overtaxed, and they often need support. An imbalanced microbiome. When we think of a microbiome, usually we're thinking of an intestinal microbiome, which is made up of many types of very beneficial bacteria. So we're looking at how can we improve the microbiome, the intestinal microbiome. But there's also an oral microbiome that we talk about, again, getting into the world of dentistry. And this is a very important piece because that can absolutely have an influence on the body. You've probably heard that gum disease can cause heart disease and the like. And many root canal treated teeth, which are dead teeth in the mouth, create a very toxic oral microbiome. Those teeth breed bacteria, they breed toxic proteins that migrate into the system, and they can migrate up into the central nervous system, into the brain, into the sinuses. They can migrate into the body, and it's been often associated with a lot of chronic diseases. Terrain imbalances. Here we're just talking about the basic milieu of the body, and that how it could become acidic, and how we try to alkalize it. Maybe we're using dietary approaches or supplemental approaches. Genomic polymorphisms. This is often talked a lot about within functional medicine, and certainly bioregulatory medicine has a very strong functional component to it. But like the MTHFR polymorphism that we hear so much about that causes methylation problems, this is just one of the many polymorphisms that a person can have. So it's often good to get tested for this and to find out which ones can be modified, which ones can be changed through supplementation or dietary approaches, as well as lifestyle approaches. Nutritional deficiencies. We know that the soil is deficient in many minerals. People are deficient in things like selenium and zinc and molybdenum and vanadium and rubidium, and many of the unpronounceable minerals. Those are common nutritional deficiencies, and we see each one of those minerals is a very important part of our biochemistry. They play into different enzyme systems of the body. So we want to, as much as possible, bring that back into the body and fortify the person with minerals and different types of nutrients. Environmental toxicity is a huge piece of it. As we know that it's not only are we living in a world of toxic chemicals, but we're also living in a world of toxic electricity, that this is a huge piece of it, and that we're being bombarded with 5G and all kinds of Wi-Fi all the time. And so, we have to shield ourselves from this. It's because it's just the volume is being turned up every day. So it's not just about chemicals and toxic metals and heavy metals. We hear so much about that, but it's really important to understand that we live in an environment that also has a lot of toxic electricity, EMFs and the like. Accumulation of metabolic waste. Many people are poor eliminators. They might have constipation or something like that, and they just don't eliminate their waste well. So we have to find ways of improving that. Non-ionizing as well as ionizing radiation. That's what I was just talking about, the toxic electricity. A foci interference field. A foci is basically loosely defined as could be a scar or a diseased piece of tissue, like a scar from a tonsillectomy or from an appendectomy or from a hysterectomy or something like that. But these scars block the biofield of the body. And so the meridians of the body flow through those scars, and they can be blocked from this. So there's ways like with neural therapy to go in and to inject around where the scar is to restore the flow of the energy through that field, so it's no longer blocked. And in geopathy, this has to do with the Earth's own magnetic field. And sometimes there's areas of the Earth, if we're sleeping on a geopathic current, that this may disturb our sleep cycle or cause us to be ill. So this has long been talked about. But again, these are just some basic underlying causes. There's quite a few more than this. But these are the kind of things that we think about when we're working with an individual. We could look at the next slide. So I have tried to mention that we're within conventional medicine. Basically, it's structural. They're looking at the structure of the body. They're scoping you, they're scanning you, they're looking for abnormal structural anomalies, tumors and the like. Then, fortunately, that conventional medicine has now moved into more of a functional side of it, where they're looking at the biochemistry of the body and how things actually function and work. And so there's a lot of talk about the genomics of that and about the microbiome. And certainly there's many good functional medicine doctors out there. But that's about with functional medicine. A lot of times, that's as far as it goes. They don't get into the bioenergetic side of it.
Mhm.
So, but we do within bioregulatory medicine. We're absolutely all about the biofield and so incorporating ideas of traditional Chinese medicine and the meridian system, and acupuncture and the like, as well as Ayurvedic medicine and the chakra system. These are things that are we now have a blueprint of what the biofield is, and there's been a lot of study in this, and we now have a more of an understanding of how we can interact with our body's biofield with different kinds of therapies as well as diagnostics. And then the psycho-emotional side of it, of course, is all very, very important. I know that I've seen cancer patients, and one of the things that I have noticed is a common theme with a cancer patient is usually there's been a trauma like a year or two prior to them being diagnosed with cancer. Something that has actually taken them off their feet. It could have been, the death of a child, or the loss of a loved one like that, or the loss of a job that they really loved, or something that has happened to them that they didn't really expect. But this trauma can deplete the immunity of the body, and if they have already antecedents in a toxic terrain, then it could set them up for some kind of chronic disease event. So we're saying that complete healing occurs when the root causes are fully uncovered and imbalances are corrected. I think we might have one more slide or two. Yeah, this just goes into the Bioregulatory Medicine Institute, which I could talk about later if you want to.
Yeah, well, thank you for that thorough download. And people are probably going, huh, what? There's so much to unpack there. And today we're not going to unpack all of what you said. There is so much wisdom there, and people can certainly go to your website and have a look. But there's one thing I wanted to pull out because it just really resonates with me in my own practice, and that's the understanding of the extracellular matrix, or the terrain, because so much of mainstream medicine is based on Louis Pasteur. One bug, one disease.
Sure.
And many of us in this field are also champions of the idea of the terrain is everything, Beauchamp. And where if the terrain is sick, if the goldfish water bowl is dirty, no matter what you put into it, they're not going to get better. So for order for the cells to communicate better, that extracellular matrix has to be cleaned up. And that's how I got into homotoxicology, which is the field. I know I have talks on that. You have talks on that. I encourage people to learn about it, because those remedies, which are called extracellular drainers, can help clean up the extracellular matrix. As we talk about, we always like to give solutions in our podcast as we talk about lowering the toxic load, no matter what healing modalities you choose, so that the organism, the individual, is not so encumbered with toxicity. And, this really ties into so many health challenges. I'll talk about kids for a minute because, my passion is children and obesity, because so many of kids and adults can't lose weight. But that's because the fat is where toxins and toxicants are stored. So it's the body's protective mechanism against these, what we call obesogens, and protecting the body. So oftentimes it will not let go of that fat store, because once you start releasing fat, you will release a lot of those toxins. And all your drainage pathways and all what we call emunctories have to be open. So you need to be working with a practitioner and be able to excrete, whether it's through breathing, sweating, digesting, peeing, sleeping, and we call those the emunctories. Any comment about that before I go on to more questions I want to ask you, James?
Well, absolutely. The extracellular matrix, the space between the cells, and we look at it in a way that it's like a depository. When the body isn't excreting the toxins in a normal way, that it will store them, and it'll store them within the matrix. Now, if the matrix gets full of these toxins, then the cells can't communicate. Basically, the cells communicate not only chemically, but they also communicate electromagnetically. And so that this impedes the body's communication system, the messenger system of the body. But eventually what happens is if it gets worse, then those toxins invade the cell, and then they start to disrupt the genetic material of the cell and can cause mutations within the cell like cancer, or they could just destroy the cell where you get degeneration within the cell. So this is a very important piece of it is detoxification. And as you mentioned, that fat too is also a storage vessel for it. So we're people that have fatty livers. Well, why do they have fatty livers? Because their liver is toxic. And so this is always an important therapy to detoxify, but you want to do it in such a way as you don't make the person sick, because as you mentioned, that those toxins start to come out and the person may not feel really well from it. But the lymphatic circulation is key to this, and empowering the lymph and making sure the lymph is free to release these toxins, as well as the eliminative organs to the liver and the kidneys.
You know, there's interesting because I teach every parent how to do brushing, skin brushing, lymphatic drainage techniques with the kids. It's true for adults as well, because the lymphatic system is a passive system. There are no valves like your veins. So it's very passive. You have to move your lymphatics. You have to be adequately hydrated to keep the lymph flowing. And of course, there are supplements, and there are certainly remedies. There's some I use. I'm a fan of a German product. It doesn't matter what it is, but we have lymph support remedies to help people doing that. But and yeah, I don't want to get into all this today, but the key is lowering the toxic load, and that begins with your air, your water, your food, your electromagnetic world, your sleep, and your emotional toxicities. There's so much cleanup to do, and that's how individuals start. You have to clean up your own terrain, your internal and external milieu, as you say. I want to ask you this question because this is one of the most important things to me, is that I want to talk about kids for a second. And I know you're not a pediatrician, that's not the point, but Bobby Kennedy, Secretary of HHS, he has been now a champion of talking about chronic disease in children. I wrote a book, What's Making Our Children Sick, and I reported 54% of American kids were sick based on a study from 2012. I suspect now it's closer to 75% of children have a chronic disease. And you have to appreciate that immunotoxicity, though that's immune diseases like allergies, asthma, eczema, common, not benign. So are manifestations of this. What do you think are the greatest challenges facing our kids? I don't want to put you on the spot here, Dr. James. Let me hear it from you, what you think are the biggest challenges.
Well, it goes back to basics here too. What are they putting in their mouth, and the kind of foods that they eat, I think has a whole lot to do with it. The obesity issue in Kentucky is probably worse than a lot of other states. They say the closer you get to Kentucky, the bigger people get. And I think this is true. But certainly for many children are very obese. And a lot of that has to do with the toxicity that they're exposed to, the quality of the food that they eat. And so that's a piece of the puzzle that has to be reconciled, that they have to start eating better. Plus, a lot of children are woefully deficient in certain nutrients as well. And that, supplementation is, again, individualized supplementation is, I think, very important to them. So you're looking at changing the diet, detoxification, supplementation. These are things that can help a child. But there's other challenges for children. The school system, I think, has failed them in many ways too. And so that's why you're seeing so many people homeschool now. And that I think is really wonderful. It's a wonderful way to educate a child if you're able to do so. and as well as things like the children are on their phones or on little iPads almost all the time, and it's so bad. Um, you, I'm old enough to say, I grew up without a computer, and we had the kind of telephone that had a wire on it, and I would go outside and play. And then my mother she had an amazing whistle, and she would whistle for me when it was time to come home for dinner. And so, this is how I grew up as a child. And things are just very different than that now, very, very different. And children sit on the couch and just play their game. They're at a restaurant and they're always on their phone while they're, eating with their family. I think this is another issue too, and I'm talking. I've spoken a lot about toxic electricity, but they're certainly exposed to this as they're on their phone with the little blue light shining in their eye. So, yeah.
To your point, this is a parent issue because your 3-year-old is not going out to AT&T and get the phone themselves. So I've been in places where I've seen 18-month-olds on their parents' phone. So parents, it behooves you to figure out what other things you can do to help entertain your children at a doctor's appointment, at an airport. There's something called books. There's crayons and coloring books. There's storytelling. But please just don't wire them into their devices.
Yes.
I mean, not only is it creating bad habits, but it releases neurotransmitters that create addictions, particularly dopamine, and it reduces crucial antioxidants in the body like melatonin, which kids need to sleep. And now we have a plethora of kids. I've read as many as 2/3 of children under the age of 10 are having dysomnias with difficulty sleeping. This is astronomical. Again, and also parents are putting these Wi-Fi baby monitors in their kids' rooms. So it behooves parents to not bombard their children with these electromagnetic frequencies and teach children how to entertain themselves. And yes, go back to some of the old school ways of what we did. Now, there's more news coming out about kids, and I have to bring it up. We are not a political organization, but it did make the news yesterday as President Trump and Secretary Kennedy made some announcements yesterday regarding autism, acetaminophen, Tylenol. Any thoughts about that, being in the health business, James, regarding this?
Well, I've long known that Tylenol depletes glutathione. Glutathione is a very important antioxidant in the body. And many people also have glutathione polymorphisms where they have deficiencies of glutathione anyway. So when you're depleting glutathione, this can really set the body up to become more toxic because it's an important detoxification pathway as well. Not only is it an antioxidant, but it's a detoxification pathway. So as Tylenol does this is all a concern. And if it's taken during pregnancy, it's been shown to cross the placental barrier and then gets into the child where it can disrupt the child's glutathione as well. So it's toxic, and I don't recommend it. I don't see any reason to take Tylenol at all. So that's one issue. Another issue they brought up was the folate issue, that many children are deficient in folate. And as we know, that with many people have a polymorphism, the MTHFR polymorphism, where they can't methylate their folate. And so that predisposes them to methylation issues, high homocysteine, which is an inflammatory chemical that can inflame not only the blood vessels, but the brain, causing amyloid plaquing, plus the bones, causing osteoporosis and the like. So it reaches far into the body, having a methylation problems, but folate is the answer. And so what we usually do, we provide a methylated folate, methyl tetrahydrofolate, to these individuals that have this polymorphism, and that seems to help. Now they're finally talking about folate deficiencies and ways in which to solve that. The last thing that they're really starting to look at finally is the vaccine issue and giving, the hepatitis B vaccine on the first day of life, and how that can impact the child. Of course, if people should understand that hepatitis B is largely a disease by drug users, needle users, as well as sexually active people. This is certainly not a one-day-old child, and so there's really no reason to do this. It's totally nonsensical. The main reason for vaccines, of course, is monetary. And for the pharmaceutical industry, they make a lot of money off of it. And so this has impacted so many children. But you put all these three things together, toxic vaccine excipients, as well as a folate deficiency, as well as the Tylenol maybe during pregnancy. And certainly that could cause a neurological insult that could end up being autism. And so the autistic rates have increased. We have to figure out why. And I think we now are finally we have an administration and people that are really starting to take charge and look at that, which I really applaud. I think that this is wonderful. That our children are our future. We have to find ways in which to solve this. Otherwise, every child born will have autism. So, it's just getting worse and worse.
Well, thank you for your thoughts on that. There are a couple of points I want to pick out. There's so much there that I can talk about. There are a few things I want to add in regarding that reduced glutathione, which is the body's master antioxidant, that also GMOs reduce glutathione. So if the parents are having a conventional diet filled with GMOs and pesticides, that reduces glutathione as well, as you mentioned. So the kids do not have that antioxidant protection. They're more at risk. Those methylation genes are super common. And what all that means is, folks, for people say, what is he talking about? Methylation it's the process where we can take a toxic substance in your body and make it less toxic or non-toxic via adding on these little something called methyl groups. And it takes it from a not water soluble to a water soluble substance, and you can literally excrete it out. For kids who can't do that, they have a problem with detoxification. And this is very high in children with autism spectrum disorder. They have a heavy rate of these methylation genetic disorders, polymorphisms, as you say, and we call them SNPs. However, let me share with you a brief clinical scenario that literally just happened. And I'm working with a patient, and she has Kaiser, which is a HMO here in California. And I asked her to ask her regular doctor to get the MTHFR. He refused. He said there are no links to MTHFR and autism, which is now affecting 1 in 12.5 boys in this great state of California. And I proceeded to send him 12 studies just off the top of my head, how that is erroneous, and he needed to do a bit more reading. I also asked him for some nutrient levels. And so, for example, mainstream medicine doesn't know if you check a child or an individual's magnesium level, you have to order a level in the red blood cell called RBC, red blood cell. But if the physician orders the plasma level of magnesium or zinc, it's almost always normal. It doesn't look at the true level of that nutrient, particularly magnesium and zinc, low in our kids. Glyphosate binds those up too, by the way. I'm the glyphosate queen here. And so we're getting an inaccurate read. The Kaiser doc said they don't test that at Kaiser. Actually, they probably do. I showed him where they do. And I showed where the parents can order the test themselves through direct labs, and the magnesium test is $45. Now, what winds up happening, James, as you know, parents are straddled paying two insurance systems. They have to pay for their regular insurance, and they pay for the outside provider and outside labs. This is lunacy. And what I'd like to see one day where they can get universal insurance, which covers everyone, their chiropractor, their bioregulatory practitioner, their anthroposophic doctor, whomever they see. But that's where we need to go. I just want to bring a couple of those points up. Any comments about those?
No, you're absolutely right about people falling through the cracks with chemistry, that most physicians do very minimal chemistry readings on individuals. And there are some amazing labs out there that do all kinds of things. They're doing, as you mentioned, red blood cell mineral levels and as well as essential fatty acid levels, as well as toxicological levels too, what kind of toxins are in the body, looking at the microbiome, just so many things that can be done to evaluate a person now. But in conventional medicine, you're not going to see that, or you don't see that. So you have to go outside the system, as you mentioned, a lot of times and pay for it, out of pocket to get these types of tests done.
And so this is maddening for me, because I'm a pragmatic practitioner with the eye on parents' purse. Way too many P's in there, but I don't look to bankrupt families. And you may have a family that has 1, 2, 3, 5 kids, and the dog and the chickens, and this is just way too much. And everyone complains of how expensive things are. Particularly what I push for is an organic regenerative diet. I mean, like, I'm hardcore. You have to eat organic. You cannot eat conventional food anymore. It is poisoned. Our food supply is poisoned, and we have to support our farmers, our organic regenerative farmers. Boy, if I had $1, James, every time I've said that to a patient, oh my God, I would be retired. No, I don't plan to retire. So we've got a situation here, but what we're doing is spot on with all our podcasts. Thank you. I know you have your podcast, as you mentioned. All the links for everything you've said will be in our show notes, which lives on the New MDs, by the way, on GMO science, and we'll talk about that. Before I wrap up your time here, I want to talk about your new book. Full disclosure, I haven't read it yet. I read your old book, and I'm reading it again. It's called Bioregulatory Medicine, and we don't have a slide of it. And I highly recommend it yourself with 4 other authors. This is a great book. And you see, I have it earmarked. My second time going through it. Love it. But please tell us about your book. It's huge. Why you wrote it? Can you share a little bit about that before we wrap up our visit today?
Well, my other book it's called Breast Cancer, The Rest of the Story. And you probably remember Paul Harvey, The Rest of the Story. And my mother passed from cancer, and I've just seen so many of my friends, female friends, that have also developed breast cancer. And so it started small. I gave the patient some information on breast cancer, and maybe it was like a 10-page little pamphlet, and I realized that was woefully not enough information. So I increased it to like 50 pages, and it still wasn't enough. And so I thought, I'm going to write a book about it. And so what this book is, it talks about conventional information, so that people can understand, what their oncologist is doing. But it also gives a lot of what we think of as bioregulatory approaches to breast cancer. The 2 things I see that are important about it is cancer is not the tumor, it's the terrain. Okay, I'll say that one more time. Cancer is not the tumor, it's the terrain. And the second thing is there's always a psycho-emotional component. And both of these, in other words, as I'd mentioned before, there like maybe a trauma that has happened a year or 2 before that triggered this to start to develop. And that has to be addressed. That trauma or that psycho-emotional rip to their psyche has to be resolved. Otherwise, you're really not going to get to the fundamental healing of it all. So those 2 things, you're working on the terrain. Otherwise, if you don't work on the terrain, the tumor will come back, because that's what gives rise to the tumor. And you're also working at a psycho-emotional level too. Those 2 things are overlooked in conventional medicine. Usually they just cut it out and then can send you home and say, well, come back and we'll do some scans and just kind of check you from time to time. And after 5 years, you should be just fine. But that doesn't always work out so well. And so that's why there's so many recurrences. But the book is over 700 pages. It's online. It's a ebook, and it could be purchased. I think it's about $40 for it. But I think that for anybody that has breast cancer, or if they have a friend or a loved one that has breast cancer, this is a very good textbook that can guide them through it. So it's not the kind of book you read from front to back. It's more in chapters on different kinds of subjects. So it's more encyclopedic in that regard. But put a lot of time into it. It took over 10 years to really write this book, and so I think that it's useful for people that are battling with this.
Well, Dr. James Odell, thank you for your work, for what you've offered the public, people, other practitioners like myself. Before I wrap up with you, I'm going to just ask you to share with our audience, how can people contact you, what the best sources where they can find you and your work, please?
Yeah. Well, Bioregulatory Medicine Institute, I'm again, the executive medical director. So you can go brmi.online. That's brmi.online. And that is a huge database of information. It's all free. So you could contact me through that website. I also do a podcast, and all of the podcasts have been archived. We put out an e-journal every other month, and that, again, is all free to the public. All you have to do is just give your email address, and we'll send you one. And at the time, we're also doing conventions, but right now we started doing cruise conventions, which are really fun. So with the celebrity ship that we have, the Vitality and Beyond, we call it. The ship is the Beyond, Celebrity Beyond, and this will be in March the 1st next year. And if you're interested in joining our tribe and coming with us, we have a great lineup of speakers, and the ship is just fantastic. It's a new ship. It's 17 decks high. It's got so many fun things to do if you've never been on a cruise boat before. But we're going to St. Kitts, Dominican Republic, and St. Martin. So I think that is will be a lot of fun to do too. But we found that cruises are a really good way to have conferences as well. So please look into our website. You could join us for our cruise, and also sign up for our e-journal. You could visit us on our social media and like us, but please follow us. We're on Facebook and Instagram, as well as LinkedIn. And we share a lot of information there too. Again, it's all free. It's free to the public.
Well, thank you for that. And before I have you exit, and I'm going to talk to our attendees a little bit about a few more upcoming things on GMO science, the new MDs, and my course, my homeopathic course. But I will be joining you on that cruise, and I'm speaking about fake food and autoimmunity in children, one of my favorite topics, and why our kids are now developing immunotoxicity and autoimmunity at a very alarming rate, and what we can do to reverse that. So I'm looking forward to that cruise. And I want to say, from all of us at GMO Science, the new MDs, Dr. James Odell, thank you so much for joining us. Feel free to jump off, and I'm going to talk homeopathy for the next 10 minutes of our show.
Thank you so much for having me, and be well.
You as well. Take care. Good health to you. Wow. Woo. Whew. Boy, I just love that man, what he's doing in the world. So smart, so sage, so well read. So what I'm going to just share with you next few minutes before we jump off for our folks is a course I put together. It's running right now. It's it's available live for the next few Sundays. It's all recorded. We can access those talks if you're unable to attend live, and you can ask questions. And it's in conjunction with South Seas University. It's an online school where I am an adjunct professor. And I'm happy to work with Lady Carla Davis, who's the administrator of the program, nutritionist, and runs Masters of Health online magazine. Let me show you a brief video, and then I'll tell you what I'm doing. And then we're going to wrap up and say au revoir. Thank you. If you go on to South Seas University, go under the tab academic, you'll see the regenerative pediatrics course and you can sign up there. Your monies, there you go. There's the link. Thank you to Ann Temple, our producer, for being on top of this. Thank you, Ann. When you go, you should know that your payment is a tax-deductible donation to GMO Science .org, as well as South Seas University and the courses they provide. So please sign up. And these courses are particularly germane right now because as we are announcing, don't give that Tylenol with that fever. What are people going to do? We are providing other solutions. Homeopathy has been in my toolbox for the past 30 years. So I will be covering this Sunday, 12 noon Pacific time, Stages for Ages. You saw it in the little promo video. And I'm covering the various issues from literally breastfeeding through infancy, through childhood, through adolescence, and how we treat the main issues. I'm going to make sure fever's in there since the new, expose on acetaminophen. And we've known it's not been a good solution for a long time. But parents need to swap. The next week, I will be doing swaps. This for that. That should be a lot of fun. And the 1 week I will be gone. I will be in Tucson at the Metabolic Terrain Conference, speaking about, yes, my favorite subject was autoimmunity in kids. I love railing on fake foods and why kids should not eat them. And I'll be presenting there. Thank you, Dr. Naisha Winters, for that invitation. That's coming up. And then the next week, I'm going to wrap up with the microbiome. And that is one of my favorite topics in all of pediatrics and all of medicine, is how we regain the terrain and rebuild a robust microbiome. So on that note, I like to say thank you for joining us. See you next month. We are usually recording the 3rd or 4th Tuesday. It depends, at 12 noon PST. And it looks like Dr. Deborah Davis, who was the previous head of Environmental Health Trust, may be joining us. So we have some good, we'll be all things EMF. We'll be talking about some good stuff coming up. Feel free to email us. Sign up on gmoscience.org for our e-blast. I only write 1 or 2 a month, very respectful of your time. So until then, good health, everybody, and thank you for joining us today.